Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Newsbrowse News broadcast. According to Global News, global stock markets retreated from their record highs on Wednesday, as oil prices spiked following a new flare-up in tensions that threatens the fragile ceasefire between the United States and Iran. Brent crude, the international standard, rose by 1.9% to reach $97.81 per barrel after both nations announced retaliatory military actions for recent attacks. This geopolitical escalation put immediate pressure on financial markets. In the United States, the S&P 500 fell 0.7%, ending a 9-day winning streak, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 620 points and the Nasdaq Composite lost 0.9%. Canada's Toronto Stock Exchange also fell over 1%, erasing most of the historic gains from the previous day. Additionally, government bond yields rose, with the 10-year U.S. Treasury yield climbing to 4.49%. Higher yields are raising concerns about increased borrowing costs, which could slow down economic growth and impact tech sector investments. Despite the day's downturn, some individual stocks like Medtronic and GameStop managed to post gains following strong quarterly reports. According to a report by 9 News, Australia has criticized China's decision to impose a travel ban on 4 New Zealand members of parliament who recently traveled to Taiwan. The sanctioned MPs, Maureen Pugh of the National Party, Duncan Webb of Labour, David Wilson of NZ First, and Laura McClure of the ACT Party, visited Taiwan in early May as part of a regular inter-parliamentary program. Australian Foreign Affairs Minister Penny Wong labeled the sanctions not appropriate during a Senate estimates hearing, stating that placing pressure on Democratic parliamentarians is unacceptable. Minister Wong emphasized that travel to Taiwan is a long-standing and appropriate practice consistent with the One China policy, and confirmed that Australia will raise the issue with Chinese officials in both Canberra and Beijing. New Zealand Foreign Minister Winston Peters also expressed surprise over the unprecedented travel ban and instructed diplomatic officials to discuss the matter with Beijing. This diplomatic tension comes ahead of a scheduled meeting in Australia between New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon and Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese to discuss regional security and defense cooperation. According to a report by 9 News, Australian Treasurer Jim Chalmers has strongly rejected proposed new U.S. tariffs on Australian exports, which could remain in place for years. The U.S. Trade Representative, US2R, recently placed Australia and over 40 other nations on a list of countries accused of failing to adequately stop the import of goods produced by forced labor. As a result, affected countries face new tariffs ranging from 10 to 12.5%. While Australia's strict anti-slavery laws are among the strongest in the world, the USTR report claimed Australia has failed to effectively enforce a prohibition on forced labor imports. Economics experts warned that these new tariffs, unlike previous emergency trade measures, are designed for the long term and could prove difficult to repeal even under a different U.S. administration. Fortunately for Australian trade, major exports to the U.S., such as beef and pharmaceuticals, will be exempted from the tax. Nevertheless, Chalmers slammed the tariffs as unwarranted, unnecessary, and inconsistent with the free trade agreement between the two nations, stating that Australia will continue to stand up for its exporters. According to a report by the Canadian Press, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled 8-1 on Thursday in favor of the Trump administration, upholding the Federal Communications Commission's FCC authority to enforce data privacy laws on telecommunications companies. The ruling stems from a legal challenge by industry giants Verizon and AT&T, which disputed a combined $100 million in penalties imposed by the FCC. The agency had issued the fines after determining that both carriers failed to adequately protect customer location data. The telecom companies argued that the FCC's enforcement process was unconstitutional, claiming they were denied the right to present their case before a jury. However, Chief Justice John Roberts, writing for the majority, clarified that the FCC's orders did not create an immediate obligation to pay while legal challenges were ongoing. While Justice Clarence Thomas dissented, advocating for a clearer path for the companies to recoup past fines, environmental advocates welcomed the ruling as a crucial safeguard for federal regulatory enforcement. Representatives for the companies expressed hope that the ruling would at least bolster their standing to challenge future agency penalties in federal court. According to Al Jazeera, a UK government review on anti-Semitism has recommended that National Health Service (NHS) staff in Britain be barred from wearing political badges on their uniforms. The review, led by the government's anti-Semitism advisor John Mann, suggests that badges expressing support for Palestinians, Israel, political parties, or even football teams should not be worn at work. Mann emphasized that clinical environments should remain free from political campaigning, as such displays could make patients feel uncomfortable or biased against, thereby breaching the universal access principle of the NHS. The recommendations come in the wake of an investigation into anti-Semitism within the NHS following an attack on a synagogue in Manchester last October. Health Minister James Murray stated that the government accepts these robust and practical recommendations to combat racism and discrimination. This move occurs amid ongoing criticism of UK authorities for cracking down on pro-Palestine activism during the conflict in Gaza. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.